All right, this is part 2, talking about rugs that came out from the most recent drop. And to address the controversy immediately, we are doing the rug pricing and appraisal video. That got the most votes. I put a poll on my YouTube community page to see if people were more interested in learning about dyes or learning about pricing. For a while, it looked like dyes was in the lead, and I think it's been totally blown out of the water by pricing. So we're going to do that pricing video. I did start writing it, but just to help hold you out until then, we're gonna do another one of these videos. This was also an option on that poll, and it got the absolute least amount of votes. So the 1 or 2 people that voted for another lecture video, you got it. Don't have to worry about that right now, because we're just going to go into depth on a few of the other rugs that came out in the last drop. Some of these I've already talked about on our Instagram page in various reels, but I'm going to do a little bit more analysis in this longer form video. So let's get into it. The first rug we're gonna look at is this guy. There were a few of these in the last drop. What I mean by these are long rugs. Long rugs are rugs that are too wide to be runners, but not wide enough to be area rugs. And in my opinion, they consist of some of the most visually interesting and unique designs that I've ever seen on any rugs. I love long rugs, but in saying that, I also appreciate that it is hard to find a spot for them in a home. That doesn't stop me from getting them when I can and trying to tell people how cool they are. Because if you just look at the size of something, sort of like how condition is with a lot of rugs, if you only look at condition, if you only look at size or how it can be utilized in respect to a room, I think you miss out on a lot of really cool things. And this falls into that category. This is a Northwest Persian long rug. It is about, I think it's about 9 or 10 feet long. It's probably just under 4 feet wide. And, you know, I say they're too wide to be runners, but that's taking into account sort of New England homes. I think in other parts of the United States and parts of Europe, especially like the American South, I think has sort of large homes that can handle sizes like this. But for small New England homes, our hallways just can't do it. So let's get into the real meat and potatoes of rugs like this, and specifically Northwest Persian rugs. Northwest Persian rugs are some of the most interesting rugs out there because they encompass kind of 3 major regions: the South Caucasus, Northwest Persia, so Hiriz and sort of the Kurdish area of Northwest Persia and all of the environs of Hiriz, and Eastern Anatolia. All of these things sort of mix in this area, and there's another specific area that created these sets of rugs called the Golden Triangle. That's a little bit further west than what we would consider this Northwest Persian area, but it does encompass parts of Northwest Persia. That's a little bit confusing for this video. This is not necessarily a Golden Triangle rug, but it is a rug that shares a lot of design DNA with the Southern Caucasus, Northwest Persia, and Eastern Anatolia. And specifically, these medallions are very Hiriz area-like. Now, if you were to feel this rug, if you were to handle this rug, it does not feel like a Hiriz rug. It doesn't feel like anything in that Hiriz area. It definitely feels more Kurdish. That's where Northwest Persia gets really interesting, because at the end of the day, you can say this is from Northwest Persia, but can you, with any exactness, say who wove it, or what type of person wove it, as in what their background in weaving was? Were they more of the Caucasian sensibilities of weaving? Were they more of the Eastern Anatolian or the Kurdish or the Northwest Persian? It's hard to say, and that's what makes Northwest Persian rugs so interesting, because they do have their own design language, but because it is so sporadic and because it's so unusual, you just get weird stuff like this. You know, you get stuff that's using these sort of maybe Hiriz area medallions, but then there's this border that is really unusual and pretty Kurdish, and then this color scheme which is just crazy. These dark slate greens with the pink, and of course all natural dyes. It's a really incredible example of something that has its hands in a lot of design pies. And so when you hear that, and this is like a little thing I've learned, I feel like, when it comes to rugs, when you hear something is from Northwest Persia, what the dealer is telling you, if you hear that from a dealer, what the dealer is telling you is, we don't really have any idea what this thing is. We have a general thought as to where it might be from, but that's where it ends. And the rest is sort of up to our imagination to fill in the gaps. And that is exemplified in a rug like this. Okay, I'm starting a Patreon, and no, it's not going to affect any consistently made Instagram or YouTube content. Basically, if you like the content we make, if you want to see more, you can now support us directly for as low as $1 a month. I love rugs, I love making content about rugs, and so obviously any support we get will go towards making more content about rugs, making this a more viable profession, which ultimately just means more content. There will probably be content that we do that doesn't quite fit neatly into the other social media that we do, including articles or certain videos that will go on Patreon and will be exclusive to Patreon. For example, I bet you don't recognize this rug. You haven't seen this rug on any of our social media anywhere. And it's because I haven't posted it. It's been a secret up until now. And it's actually going to be in our next YouTube video, I think. But the efforts in drumming up support on Patreon are mostly going to go towards making content more regularly and better. Like I said before, regardless of any Patreon support, the content will keep coming. But if you like what we do and you want to see more, head on over to patreon.com/LimmyRocco to check out what we have to offer. And thank you in advance for any support. All right, let's talk Baluch. So I haven't had a Baluch rug in a while, a new Baluch rug in a while. I really enjoy Baluch rugs. I think that they exemplify how rugs were made for totally utilitarian reasons and for the enjoyment of the weavers. So you have somebody that would make something and design it in a way because they liked it, and then it would be used for their family in their, nomadic circumstances. So this is a, 4x6-ish Baluch rug, and you can see that this is a tree of life design. So what that means is in the center you have this stem or this trunk, and then coming out from either side are the branches of the tree, and on those branches lie the animals that the weaver would have been familiar with. Now, I can't say exactly what all of these are, but you can see there are some dogs maybe, some camels, what look to be some sort of birds. All very non-specific, but that's kind of what makes it a little timeless. So I think the highlight of a Baluch rug like this is thinking about the environment in which it was woven, why they chose this design, and I think it's just one of those designs that remains very classic. People love people figures, people love animals, and that has remained the case since this rug was woven, and even before that, over 100 years ago. So it's cool to see it here, and it's cool to see it endure, and especially in such pristine condition. This is a very high pile rug. There is a little bit of oxidation in the darker portions, not there, I think towards the bottom of the rug, there's a bit of oxidation in those blacks. And I think if you don't like a lot of white on rugs, then Baluch rugs sort of solve that issue. And the reason behind that is because you have to think where Baluch rugs are coming from. They're coming from these environments with not a lot of shade. And the idea, I believe, was, and this comes from this book, Baluch weavers would not use a lot of white on rugs to be able to rest their eyes on them as a retreat from the sun or the sand or the lightly colored environment. I don't know if that's true, but it is true that many Baluch rugs use very dark colors. Their bags, their rugs, they all use dark colors. So maybe there's some truth to that. I'm not sure, but it is an interesting theory, and it does play to the fact that Baluch rugs use very dark color schemes. So that is the Tree of Life Baluch rug. This is a Kazak. This is what is referred to as a Lori Pambak. The Lori Pambak rugs that you'll usually see are very refined. They have a lot of curvature to them in their line work. There's a lot of professionalism to the coloration and the drawing. And the reason that I really like this one is that it doesn't have any of that. Lori Pambak are usually defined by the fact that they are using these 3 medallions. And they're very specific medallions, although depending on the Lori Pambak, they may be using all the same medallion. It's usually, though, there's the center medallion that is one type, and then the 2 outer medallions are another type. Regardless, it's usually these 3 medallions that are taking up the field. And this one is just using these 8-pointed stars. And the drawing of the stars, the use of these sort of peripheral designs, you can see there's a scarab here. There are animals on the field, and that's why I called it the primitive Lori Pambak. Even though I usually am against using that term, but here it's just so appropriate. Because if you look at Lori Pambak rugs, there is this professionalism, usually, to their drawing. They are very, ironically, kind of aristocratic types of Kazak rugs, in my opinion. That nobody else will say that. That's just like a me thing. But, you know, you look at them and you look at other Kazaks and they're very like the upper crust of Kazak rugs. And so to see a version of that with none of that pretentiousness attached is so cool. I love too the colors that were chosen, because should we talk about purple now? I actually have another rug that I'm gonna save the purple for. So let's not talk about it. But the fact that there's purple on this rug is very, in fact, the entire color combination of the purple and the khaki is very not normal for these types of rugs. Normally, they are this like rich, cochineal red or Kermes red, depending on how you wanna put it. This one sort of has this lighter red, and it's sort of sunsetting across the field. To me, I guess the reason I like this rug so much is this is the folk art version of those more refined Lori Pambak. The color, the drawing, you know, somebody knew what a Lori Pambak design was supposed to be. The weaver of this rug, or weavers of this rug, knew what those designs were supposed to be, and they just sort of did their own thing. And to me, that's what I love to see in rugs. The more refined stuff doesn't really interest me. You know, I can appreciate a good example, but to me, the rugs that I would want to have in my home are sort of the types like this no judgment, just creativity with sort of a baseline design in the back of their minds. Just very visually interesting, lots going on, and again, just a really cool piece of folk art. Okay, can we talk about purple? Let's talk about purple. Fine, let's talk about purple. This was the nicest rug from our last drop. This is another Kazak. This is a very weird design. I liked this rug because it has that weird design though. This is called a Boteh vase tree Kazak. That's the name of this field design. It's not corresponding to any specific region or anything like that. This sort of heavy, candy-colored, rich pile is what I think a lot of people think of when they think of classic Kazak rugs. There's a large array of designs. It's sort of this jelly bean thing going on where you have just different primary colors, one after the other, and all their shoulder colors as well being displayed without any preconceived notion of let's put these colors in a specific order. It's basically just let's make this rug as colorful as we can. Sort of unapologetically flamboyant and boisterous in its presentation, but I think that's sort of the typical Kazak way. Large scale design. Like I said, there's a lot of pile still left on this rug. Now, interestingly, this rug has had some repairs done. So that border, that end border, from here to here has been redone on both sides. But you would almost never tell, right? I mean, look at that. Look how well that has been recreated on both sides. So what probably happened is those ends were probably worn down and somebody cared about this rug enough to have it restored. Not only are those repairs done, but there are also some remnant signs that this rug was very beloved. And you can see, if we turn it over, there are actually loops for hooks installed on the back of the rug. And what that means is that at one point, there are 4 of them. At one point, this rug was hung on a wall horizontally, like this. The array of colors on it is a good swatch for what to expect from the Kazakh region. And speaking of colors, let's talk about purple. Finally, we've gone through, what, 2 rugs now, and we finally get to talk about purple. This rug has a copious amount of purple on it. You can see it in the field, you can see it in the borders, you can see it in parts of the minor borders as well. So what's the deal with purple? Why do people freak out about purple? Why in the course of this video do I keep bringing up the color purple? Purple is an important color to find the natural dye of, and the reason is because purple, the natural purple, was one of the first dyes, if not the first dye, to fall victim to replacement by synthetic dyes. So what ended up happening is fuchsine came in. And I think it was somewhere around 1850, something like that. Fuchsine started being used in rugs. And once people found out that they didn't have to put in all of the work to create natural purple, which is sort of this combination between, what is it, red and blue? Is it indigo and cochineal? Cochineal is pretty hard to harvest because it's a bug, right? Of course, there are other sources of purple, but vegetal dyes, natural dyes, are difficult to produce. And so fuchsine comes in, and fuchsine is this chemical dye, and it creates a purple that looks, you know, on the surface, very similar to the natural purple that they were using. So, hey, we'll just switch over to fuchsine and lose all these natural purples. Of course, 50, 60, 70, 80 years down the line, fuchsine, maybe not even that much, fuchsine is a fugitive dye. So it would disappear from the front of the rug. You could still look at the back, and in fact, this bag face has some fuchsine in it. See that spot in the middle? It's like this pinkish color. But if we look at the back, you can see it used to be purple. That is the result of using fuchsine, is that it disappears from the front of the rug. It disappears from the pile of the rug. After not a very long time, exposure to sunlight, just the elements would reduce that saturation. Natural purple, though, will last, 150 years so far on this rug. This is a natural purple. So when you find rugs that have a huge amount of natural purple on them, the value increases, because as time went on, that purple, that natural purple, was harder and harder to find. Scarcity created the market and rarity for purple dye in rugs. And this rug has a lot of it. It has a lot of all of these good colors, all natural, a little bit of oxidation in this minor outer border, parts of it at least, creating this sort of 3D effect on those floral motifs. But this is a very good Kazak. This is the best rug we have in stock right now, I think. Just in terms of, I mean, right up front, it's not my favorite that we have in stock. But I think in terms of quality, in terms of dye selection and condition, it's the best rug we have. The Boteh vase tree Kazak. Did you hear that? That means this rug is heavy. This I have listed as an East Anatolian long rug. I think it actually is Northwest Persian or Moghan, which is Southern Caucasus. I actually think it's Southern Caucasus. I had a friend of mine reach out to me who is more of an expert in attribution, and he believes that it is Southern Caucasus, probably Moghan, just based on the weave. I thought it was Eastern Anatolian, mostly because of the Kurdish influence I felt like on the borders, and especially the colors. When I think of Eastern Anatolian, when I think of a lot of Anatolian rugs, but when I think of Eastern Anatolian, I think of highly saturated colors. I think of very, very colorful rugs. And color is something that this rug is not lacking. Like I said, this is a long rug, another long rug, and it is using a design that I've talked about before called Memling gulls. So it's this design right here is referred to as a Memling gull. Now Memling comes from Hans Memling, who was a painter in who knows how long ago, long time ago, and he would paint these portraits of people, and the rugs that he would paint within those portraits, many of them contained that design. So that's where it comes from. What it actually is, I have no idea. But Memling gulls are very commonly seen, especially on Moghan rugs, Southern Caucasus, but they're seen all over Oriental rug, like all over Persian, Caucasus, Southwest Persian, Northeast Persian, Baluch use them, Turkmen stuff uses Memling, like everybody uses Memling gulls. But in the region of the Caucasus, the area that does seem to use them the most is Moghan. But again, you see them everywhere. Now, the reason that this rug in particular is special is because normally when we see Memling gulls, they are enclosed, they're encased, they're compartmentalized. These ones have no border though. And so that's pretty special. But the result of that is that if you look at 4 of these gulls together and look at the medallion in the center, so this one, but then look at the 4 corners of that medallion, there is a 5th Memling gull revealed. The weaver has used the negative space to fit in more Memling gulls than they normally would have been able to if they were encased. That's just like a neat little detail. This rug has been cut and shut, so it was shortened at one point, but there's just a crazy amount of really, really nice dyes on this rug, and there are parts of it that still have just crazy pile going on. This part that I'm holding now, it's just, it feels like a kitten, you know? It just feels like you're petting the back of a cat. There isn't really much more to say, just really great color, but it does have that one interesting aspect going on with the non-encased Memling gulls. So As a point of comparison though, let's look at a Kurdish rug. Another long rug from the same drop. I'm crazy. So check this out. This is a Kurdish long rug. And what design do you see on the field? Memling gulls. But what is the difference between this one and the last one? They're encased. They are compartmented. Normally, when we see these gulls, that's what they look like. And they might be smaller, there might be a lot of them, but they are always encased. And so that last rug is special because they're not encased. This rug is cool for a couple reasons. The first of which is the color scheme. I just really like this sort of slate green and orange. I've had a couple rugs like this. To have the orange field is just really nice. This sort of copper I really like, along with the varying shades of, it is a slate green, but there's also this cobalt blue. So there's 3 main medallions across the field and then 2 diminutive medallions at the bottom. But each of the medallions has something different going on in the center. So if we look at the first one, you can see that it is sort of this is like a Turkic motif. You see it, you know, it's a latch hook thing. I mean, it literally could be seen on anything. Any sort of rug, but it's just there to differentiate it between the other two. The second one is sort of, I like to call that like a fishbone looking thing. And then the third one is this sort of voided stepped pyramid, which is really cool. I like that third one the best. Great colors and just a really cool, differently styled types of medallions across the field. Just kind of unusual because normally they're just sort of all the same. But to have, you know, all these different medallions is pretty cool. So I think that's all I'd like to talk about today. From here until probably May, I am seriously busy, but I am trying to make time for rug stuff, including coming out with the appraisal video, which I promise will come out. I am writing it, after which we probably will do the dye video because there was a substantial amount of interest for that as well. So we have videos in the chamber. They're ready to go. But thank you for watching. If you made it this far, like the video. If you're not subscribed, do that.